name's Callum Swan, my game tag is Swanny, and we're here at the Call of Duty Championships.
So how did you get involved in esports?
It all started around, I'd say, 6 or 7 years ago, to be honest, when I first started playing competitively. Call of Duty was, in fact, my first competitive title. I'd previously played games before that, casual games, strategy games on the computer, and just fan favourites, I guess, like Age of Empires, Command and Conquer. And then, as I bought an Xbox, I slowly transitioned over the competitive side of things. I think it somehow satisfied an inherent competitive nature, and I began playing more and more, dedicating more time to it. And that sort of coincided with the growth of esports, or competitive gaming as it was known back then, to the point where today I'm actually able to make a living from it.
So what's the difference between someone who plays Call of Duty well and someone who plays it professionally?
I'd say that the people who play professionally are a fraction, or even the people who play competitively. The esports community it's absolutely minuscule compared to the casual community of Call of Duty. And I'm sure everyone knows that Call of Duty is a franchise. It has one of the largest casual communities, one of the largest fan bases in the world of gaming. So it's marginal, just how many people are actually professionals. And what separates them, I think, is it's just initially it's how much time they dedicate to it. It's maybe just an inherent talent, or a gift they have with the game. Maybe it's reaction times, or how quick they are reacting to things, or their aim. And then as they dedicate more and more time to it, it's sort of, you learn more and more things as a team. And I think teamwork is one attribute which really separates the person who comes on and plays occasionally from the professional player who makes a living from it.
Did you play any sports growing up?
Yeah, I played football. Also, well, you guys are probably soccer, if you guys want to call it that. But yeah, I played soccer or British football and swimming as well. And I think kind of my background in sports, and the fact that I study sports at school, and I have a background, in various sports, and I still have hobbies. I enjoy watching other sports. I don't particularly play as much because I'm playing a lot of Call of Duty 90% of the time, but I think that's sort of added fuel to the fire when it comes to Call of Duty and in-game. The fact that I'm competitive in whether it was football when I was a kid or swimming, and that's kind of transferred over to gaming.
What's a typical day in your life as a pro gamer?
It's, as people would expect, it's not your typical 9 to 5 hours. It's unregimented schedule. You could be up at 5 a.m. playing. It really depends on who's online and things. So it's really one of the good points, I guess, is that it's really flexible, and that you can just hop on whenever you want, as long as your team are on and there is another team to practice against. But it usually involves waking up, playing copious amounts of Call of Duty, eating, playing more Call of Duty, and then sleeping and repeating. Generally, we try to play, I'd say, at least 4 hours a day, but the sheer quantity of playing, I guess, resembles any other full-time job. It's just a schedule. It's not your typical 9 to 5 and then get off and you have the break on the evenings. Sometimes you're playing more on weekends because there's more tournaments, or you're playing more in the evenings because that's when people tend to be online.
Now, what advice would you give to someone who wants to become a pro gamer?
I'd say, and this, you might not expect it, but I think they should seriously consider whether they actually want to become one, because from an outsider's perspective, it looks cool, you play video games for a living, but I think people underestimate just how much goes into it behind the scenes. Things like this, things that the media side of it, the social media, gathering a fan base, streaming, generating ad revenue, things like YouTube. It's not just about plugging in your controller and playing the game. There's so many things which, if anything, exceed the amount of time required in-game, out of game, that you need to do in order to fulfill the requirements. So it's about a lot more than simply just playing the game.
Do you have a favorite map right now in Advanced Warfare you like to play on, and why?
I'd give you a map and game mode combination. I'd probably say Solar or Retreat Hardpoint, because myself, I'm predominantly an AR player or an assault rifle player, and those maps, due to the layout and the buildings and the roofs and the power spots, they kind of favour the long-range players who want to sit back and pick people off.
How have you seen the Call of Duty Championship evolve over the last 5 years?
Not just the Call of Duty. I think the Call of Duty Championship is a small example, but esports as a whole has grown, and Call of Duty esports as a whole has grown exponentially over that period, to the point where My first tournament I competed in, I think I ended up winning. I came third and won like £60, I think, and it was in the basement of a gamer base. And then you come to events like this where the third place prize is $125,000, and it really puts it all into perspective. So, if anything, if it continues to grow at this rate, I think, who knows, we might be in the Staples Centre next, not just this place.
And how have you seen Twitch help it grow?
Well, Twitch obviously is an integral part of it as a streaming platform, and as a platform to kind of push your individual fan base and create content and things. As I said earlier, it's sites such as Twitch, such as MLG TV, Azubu, all the YouTube, even all the various streaming and uploading platforms. It's imperative that players, are on them, because it's about as much as playing the game for competitive players. They have to be entertainers as much as they do professionals.
Speaking of that, how do you keep track of your fans when you're streaming on Twitch?
Obviously on Twitch there's various features. You need to interact with the chat. There's a subscriber thing. A lot of players like to offer various incentives to the subscribers, and then that ties in with Twitter. So often the people who subscribe on Twitch, you'll often be interacting with them on Twitter, and then you can post on Twitter or Facebook and things when you're actually streaming. So all of the various social media sites kind of intertwine and link together.
So every year Call of Duty releases a new game. What are some of the challenges as a pro gamer adapting to the nuances that they change?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, Call of Duty as an esports title it's completely different in that aspect, in that every other title is consistent throughout the years. It's the same title. Counter-Strike, I think it's only changed perhaps once or twice. Source 1.6, and then the recent CS:GO, and then you've obviously got League of Legends, which has remained the same. But Call of Duty, as you said, because it changes annually, it's actually, I think, it attracts a more casual user base to the competitive community, because it's easier to integrate them in when you're not behind a few years. It's a fresh playing field each year, and it allows sort of more talent, more people to rise to the top every November, every year when the game's released, because you're not forced to catch up with all the people who have been playing the same strategies in the same game for years and years.
How has it helped that Activision consults with pro gamers in designing future COD titles?
It's, in one word, it's good. It's beneficial to the scene, but it's somewhat expected. As esports continues to grow, you expect the developers, and it's necessary for the developers to sort of increase their involvement to match it. And if it wasn't for events such as this, which is 90% developer support, then the community would be nowhere near the size it is at the moment. And as you've got players such as, I don't know if you've heard, but Raymond Lussier, Rambo, he's actually one of the consultants for Sledgehammer, and there are various other players. So it just shows that it sort of legitimizes esports as an industry in a way that these developers of the games are actually willing to employ people from the esports industry to help make their game.
Last question is, do you have a favorite Call of Duty game to play for the esports, and why?
Black Ops 2, unequivocally, and I think that goes for the vast majority of... I think if you ask the vast majority of players at this event, they'd have the same. This game it's up there. I'd say it's, it could rival Black Ops 2, but because the season hasn't finished, we don't know how it's going to turn out. But Black Ops 2 as a whole, it was consistently entertaining to watch, entertaining to play, but most importantly, from a spectator's perspective, it drew in the crowds, it drew in the audiences. Things like, it was the first time Hardpoint as a game mode was introduced, and things like the caster, the spectator mode. It just really added to the whole experience for spectators.